In 3 days, I'll be in New York running an event for a French Medtech founder that I've been working with for about the past month and a half. His name is Bruno Aubert. His company is Soul Cooler. That's SOLE, as in insoles. You'll see why. And his company is based down in the south in Perpignan. And the product that he's about to introduce on the New York stage, WarnFeet, that's WARN, is the first mass market system designed to prevent diabetic foot ulcers before they happen. This is crossing the Atlantic, accelerating revenue across the Atlantic for American and European businesses. I'm Christina Rebuffet-Broadus, your host. And today I want to take you inside what we're building for Bruno's event later this week. Now, not talking about like the polish and the architecture, because what's struck me most watching this come together in real time is how different the event that we're walking into on June 3rd looks from the one that Bruno first described to me when we started working on this project together. And that gap between what he imagined and what this is going to look like, I think, is probably one of the most useful things that I can share with you at this stage. If you're a French founder thinking about introducing your own company or product at New York Tech Week and maybe anywhere else in the US. But before we get into that, a bit on Bruno first, because he deserves this spotlight. Bruno is an engineer who's been building things in thermodynamics and materials for more than 40 years. And Soul Cooler is actually his third startup. His first one was called Oxygerm, because they're based in the Occitanie region. It was in the late 90s. And they were working with it was a medical waste disinfector. And get this, clients, the people that were using this, Hitachi Medical, the U.S. Navy, for example. So this is not like a small thing. The second startup was called CarePole, and it was high sensitivity air quality sensors. Now, again, here's the client list: the Environmental Protection Agency, NASA, Veolia, cities from New York to Incheon in South Korea. Now, he sold CarePole to Envia in 2015. So this is not, with Soul Cooler, this is not his first time building something serious, and it is not his first time selling into the US. Now, a little bit about Soul Cooler, because I want you to understand the context and what this is all about. So Soul Cooler, the current company, was founded in 2019. And the problem that it's pointed out with their latest product, WarnFeet, is, like I said, is a very specific market. It's diabetic foot ulcers. And that's just one use for it. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But anyway, diabetic foot ulcers are the leading cause of non-traumatic amputation in the world. Now, I didn't know this. These are all things that I learned working on this project. And it's also one of the reasons why I find that this project is just absolutely both impressive and necessary. Like, I look at that, I'm like, how does this not exist? And Bruno just explained it very simply to me. He said, it's because the technologies are really difficult. And I said, that makes sense. So, the existing tools that we have that exist to detect these diabetic foot ulcers, they are mostly lab grade pressure mats and thermal sensors. Now, what that basically means is that they are expensive, they are awkward, and honestly, there's a lot of just buggy technology that means that, they're missing data. They disconnect from the smartphone that they're supposed to be paired with to collect that data. Patients don't continue to use them because of these problems. And WarnFeet comes in and solves all of those problems. So Soul Cooler is building the first mass market diabetic foot prevention system designed really to fit into patients' daily life and also at a price point that makes it deployable at scale. And when I say a price point, we're looking at like 100 times, maybe even more, we're looking at something like $25 a month versus $200 a month. So, you know, this is going to be revolutionary on the market of diabetic care and prevention. So when Bruno asked me to help him introduce WarnFeet at the New York Tech Week 2026, I said yes for one reason above others, even though there were lots of other reasons, being that we met a couple of years back. And I just really enjoyed following his progress, and Bruno as a person. Anyway, he was coming in with the intention of actually building a U.S. presence, not going in and I want to just test, I want to try it out and see what happens, etc. Because in my experience, that posture is one of the best predictors of which founders are going to end up making it in the US market. Now, there's lots of other things, of course, that are going to determine, but one thing that does make a big difference is the mindset and the posture of the founder when going into the US market. So we've had maybe about 6 weeks or so to put this together, 6 to 8 weeks to put this together. And it's, as I'm recording this, it is Sunday, May 31st, and the event is on Wednesday, June 3rd. And, you know, someone that's been helping me with this, Stephanie Leo, who, you know, runs the Maison de l'Occitanie in New York and has seen more New York Tech Week events come and go than almost anyone that I know. So she has also been involved in this because our goal is to get this Occitan company from the southwest of France to New York City and then to the American market. So I want to get into some of the things that are often underestimated by, you know, founders on maybe both sides of the Atlantic, is that you can't run the same event format everywhere. And this is maybe one of the big lessons that I want to talk about in this episode. For example, you know, a clinical product demo at let's say a diabetic federation conference in San Francisco is totally different beast from a breakfast event at New York Tech Week. Same product, same founder, completely different room. Yeah, at a medical conference, people come specifically to see the technology, to evaluate the data, to stay in there until the last slide and get into all those nitty-gritty details with all the charts and the data and the numbers and all of that stuff because it's important and that's what you come for. But at Tech Week, people come to be in the room, to meet each other, to scan the city for what's new and what could be, you know, worth taking the time to follow up with a coffee the following week. And, you know, to find out about what's going on, the trends, what's happening, what are the topics that are being talked about. And that shift from something that's very, let's say, clinical and scientific and technological to something that is more innovation, technology, that's probably where we worked the most. So it's not this like, here's my product, not here's all of the science that is backing this product. Of course, the science is there, the science is solid, and we're going to have a keynote from one of the leading experts in this topic to sort of introduce, you know, the topic. But the harder question was more, what shape does an event need to take so that this particular room, at this particular time and place, the people walk out wanting to keep talking to Bruno? So when Bruno first sent me his vision of the agenda and what it looked like, it was about an hour and a half of presentation time. There was a long keynote. There was a long product presentation. There was a round table on the economic implications. There was Q&A. It was very thorough, very serious. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It's just that is not what is expected in this context. That's the kind of agenda that's going to empty the room in New York 20 minutes before the end, which is right at the moment when the networking is supposed to start. And that's where you get to have those one-on-one conversations that allow you to keep the conversation going. So we adapted how we envisioned this breakfast event. So, we brought the stage time, the presentation time down to about 45 minutes total. Even less than that, I think. It's somewhere between 35 to 45 minutes. There's, of course, plenty of time for networking on the front end. We've got a keynote that's about 15 to 20 minutes. It's going to be delivered by Dr. Bijan Najafi, who is, like I said, one of the world's leading voices on diabetic foot care. So, pretty big stuff here. He's there to frame like the clinical reality and, just kind of lay the foundations for what we're dealing with in terms of problem. And then Bruno's going to do a spotlight, not on the product. We're not there to do a pitch on the product, and that's a different kind of presentation. But in about 10 focused minutes, we're looking at what are the problems on the market today? What is the potential here that we can, what are the solutions that we can bring to those problems? And how does WarnFeet actually solve all of these problems? And what does the market potential look like, not only in diabetic foot care, but also in, we've identified 5 other adjacent markets that just, again, like I said, the potential for this is huge. And then what we're really looking forward to is just opening it up to discussions and networking with the aim of getting more conversations going after the event. Now, Stephanie said something to me early on in one of our calls, and I absolutely love this phrase, and I keep coming back to it very often. And she said, the idea isn't to present everything. The idea is to create a space where the conversations can continue afterwards. And that sentence really became part of our design brief. So it meant that, the way that we talked about how are we going to do the timing? What are we going to talk about? How are we going to talk about? What are the words we are going to use? Does this open a conversation, or does it close the discussion? Now, another thing that was a big difference from what I've seen in France versus New York City, New York runs on digital. So no paper flyers, no printed sign-up sheets, no programs that get, thrown out at the airport. We're talking about things like QR codes, sign-up links, follow-up forms, so that everything is digital, everything is trackable, and it's, literally in your pocket or in your hand because it's on your smartphone. Now, that's something that you want to keep in mind when you're preparing for your events is just, how are things done? What do I need to bring? What do I need to prepare? And again, that's going to be different, perhaps depending on the event that you're going to, where it's based, and you want to do your research to find that out in advance. One more reframe, let's call it, that we ended up doing in preparing this event had to do with a scientific consortium. So when I asked Bruno what his objective was for the morning, the first answer that I got was, I want to get people to sign up for the prevention consortium right there in the room at the end of the event. And I said, yeah, no. Because why? Because this is not the time and the place for that. The goal isn't to get people to raise their hand and to say yes to joining a prevention consortium right there on the spot. The goal is to get them to allow us to continue the conversation with them. And that's a different ask. People don't commit publicly to a scientific board the first time they hear about it. I mean, especially in a place like New York, where, everybody is super busy. I mean, in English, we have an expression, a New York minute, meaning very, very, very quickly. So they might not be ready to publicly commit to something right then and there on the spot, but they will agree to a follow-up call, to swap business cards, to, say, hey, let's put 15 minutes in the agenda next week, and you can tell me a little bit more about this, but right now I've got to run because I've got another event to get to. And this one-on-one time, even if it's short, even if it's just 10 minutes, you'd be surprised at how quickly you can get some real information and get the next step in place in just a quick call of 10 minutes with an American. So what we did is we kind of softened that ask for the consortium into just a 30-second mention from at the end of the talk. Now there's a QR code for people to opt in and to learn more. And we're going to be recruiting the actual consortium members person by person during the networking hour and then in the one-on-one conversations and really formalizing it over the weeks after the event. So that by the time Bruno walks into his next meeting, with clients or partners or investors or whoever, he won't just have like the 30 vague names of people that said they were interested. Because as you know, because you've listened to this podcast, an American saying they're interested, it's yes, it's awesome. That doesn't mean anything. So what we don't want to have just 30 names of people said, yeah, that looks great. That's interesting. We want to have a handful of engaged experts who said yes intentionally and who will be on board with this. So the principle underneath all of this, if you take only one thing from this episode, is that the format of your US event has to match the kind of room that you're walking into. Introducing a French medtech in an event like the New York Tech Week, it needs a totally different shape from introducing the same medtech at a clinical conference, whether that is in New York or Boston or Austin or, California. It's going to be, what is the event that I'm going into? In a New York room, especially during Tech Week, the event is the magnet. It gets the right people in the door, and the room itself is where the introduction actually happens. So if you're a French founder planning your own introduction into the U.S. market, whether that's New York or anywhere else, the question that I want to leave you with is not how am I going to present my product and make sure that they understand everything about my product and how it works and how it was built and the technology that goes into it. The question you want to ask yourself is, how can I spark conversations about the problems that my product solves? And most importantly, perhaps, how do I keep those conversations going? And this is what we're going to be doing on Wednesday, June 3rd at the Maison de l'Occitanie in Midtown, New York. So, of course, Bruno's going to be there. Stephanie from the Maison de l'Occitanie is going to be there. Dr. Najafi is going to be there virtually because he's based in California. And we're very thankful that he has agreed to present at 6:30 in the morning, his time, just with the time difference between California and New York. But I think that tells you just how important this technology is and this product is, that one of the world's leading experts on the topic is going to be with us at 6:30 in the morning to talk about it. So the conversations that we start in this room are the ones that we're going to be cultivating for the rest of the year. And if you're going to be in New York for Tech Week and you want to be in the room where it happens, a little reference to the musical Hamilton. If you know me, you know that I'm obsessed with that musical. Anyway, if you want to be in the room where it happens, grab your spot at the event. It's happening on Wednesday, June 3rd from 8:45 to 11 a.m. in the morning. And I'll put the link in the show notes so you can join us. Like I said, it's at the Maison de l'Occitanie in Midtown. And yes, there will be croissants. So the more diverse the room is, the better the conversations get. And we honestly sincerely hope to see you on June 3rd. So thanks for listening to Crossing the Atlantic. And if you know a French medtech founder thinking about New York Tech Week or any, introduction into the US market, then this episode is for them too. All right. Thank you very much. And I will see you next time.